making these decisions, right? The people that are making decisions are MPs. And MPs, if you don't know who your local MP is, it's very simple. When you were younger at school and you had that person that would come round wearing like a tweed three-piece suit that looked and smelt like a paedophile, that's not your local MP, that's your local councillor. They're different. So if you look at our MPs, right, all they're supposed to do is represent an area. Right? That's all they're supposed to do is represent an area. So, for example, in this room right here, you guys would have an MP, you guys would have an MP, you guys would have an MP. And that MP's job is just to represent you. And the population in the UK, we have a population of 68.2 million people, and we have 650 MPs, and they're just supposed to represent us and what we want, right? So who are they and how well do they represent us? Well, let's have a look at the population as a whole. The average salary for the UK, if you add up everybody's job and divide it by how many people they are, what do you think is the average salary in the UK?
20,000.
20,000? Higher than 20? 30 is 31,000 is the average salary in the UK. But here's the thing. The average salary is 31,000, but by the time they would take away tax, what you actually get paid is 24,000, which really bugs me because I wouldn't go for a job for 24, but I'd go for one for 31. So that's the first lie they get you on, right? That's the first lie. You get paid 24, and that works out about £500 a week, right? So it's about £500 a week. Yes, £2,000 a month, right? And I just want you to think of this. Somebody very wise once said that you should never spend more than a third of your income on your living costs, right? On your housing, you should never spend more than a third. Welcome to London, right? You should never spend more than a third in living. Now, in London, the average salary is a bit more. It's about 39,000, right? So you get a bit more than 2,000. Now, the average rent, what's the average rent in the UK? Any ideas? 600 is about 968. It's about 968 is the average rent. And if you're getting paid £2,000, you're already nearly half. If you live in London, the average rent is 1,500, right? So if you're getting £2,000, I mean, you guys know what that's like, okay? So that's the average salaries, right? And that's for most people, that's what they're trying to make money work for them. They're taking that kind of money home, right? Now, MPs, what do you think is the average salary for an MP? 70,000, higher than 70, higher than 60? 80, 82,000. 82,000 is the average salary for the MP. Here's an interesting point. I want you to think about the jobs that you guys do and think about your employer. Does your employer pay you extra money to cover your living costs? No. Does your employer pay you extra money to cover your travel costs? No. Does your employer give you free sandwiches? No. No, exactly. No, right? Sometimes. She works for Pret, and sometimes she does, yeah. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes. So here's the thing with MPs. So their take-home, right, after everything's about 56,000. They work out, their take-home is about 4,800. If you're on 81, 82, you're about 4,800 take-home, right? However, on top of that, when they come to stay in London, they get their rent paid for, right? They get their rent or money towards their mortgage. They get that money paid for, right? So that's not coming away from their 4,800. And do you think they're sharing with Northerners arguing about the heating bills? Unlikely, right? Unlikely. On top of that, when they travel to London, they get their travel paid for. And they're not having to get the 11:38, 4.5-hour service, right? They get the peak time, super fast train ticket is covered, it's paid for, right? And I have it on good authority that they get free sandwiches, right? So these are MPs. So who are they? And how come they're making that money? And you go, do you know what? It's great that they're making that money because you want the best people for the job. You want good people for the job, and you should pay people what they're worth. It's great for people to have a high salary. Why not? It's good for you to be paid what you're worth, and if you've got a position of power, responsibility, you should be well paid for that, right? So what are their qualifications in order to become an MP in order to do that? Well, the majority of MPs in the UK and the majority of Prime Ministers in the UK all had a very similar upbringing and background. The majority of Prime Ministers in the UK went to a private school. If you don't know if you went to a private school or not, it's very easy. Did you go skiing every 3 weeks? Private school. Did you go on a holiday once at the end of 6 years where you all went on a minibus to the Isle of Wight and everybody came on their periods at the same time? State school, right? Very different, right? Two different types of school. Now, many of them went to Oxford and Cambridge, but they started out at places like Eton. How much do you think it costs for 1 year at Eton?
18 grand.
18 grand for 1 year at Eton. Very nice if you can get it. It's actually about 48,000 for 1 year at Eton. 48,000. Now, bearing in mind the average salary is 31, so 48 when the average salary is 31, all right? So already there's this discrepancy. Now, if you're looking at right now in our government, Right now in our government, those in power, over 65% of them went to a private school, went to a school like Eton, over 65% of them. So how representative are they of the population when it comes to muggles? Only 7% of us went, only 7%, right? Now, I actually went to Oxford Uni, right? It wasn't to study, it was a day trip, and I went to have a look. And I saw the kind of quality of lectures that they received at Oxford University. And that's what you kind of pay for. You pay for education because you want to get a good quality education. And some of the lecturers they had at Oxford University was really interesting. So they had Mother Teresa on the wall. They had Mother Teresa came and gave a lecture, right? They had Princess Margaret on the wall. If you don't know who Princess Margaret is, she's the one in season 2 that falls in love with the gay photographer, wears a little Chanel 2-piece. Yeah, that's her. She's like very Jackie O, but with less bloodstains. That's Princess Margaret. And you have the Dalai Lama. You have the Dalai Lama come and give a lecture at Oxford University, and you go, wow, everyone should have access to that kind of great education. Wouldn't it be wonderful to grow a child's mind with that level of information and education? And then you realise that whilst at Oxford, the Dalai Lama was teaching everyone about downward dog and namaste, do you know who we had at my school? At my school, we had Fireman Sam come along, right, saying, make sure your grandma doesn't fall asleep on the sofa with a cigarette in her mouth. Otherwise, you'll all die of smoke inhalation. That's who we had at my school, right? It's a very different level of education, important all the same. So you go, fine. Well, what does education matter? Education doesn't matter. It's all about representation. It's life experience, right? Well, what life experience do these people in power have?